Hello friends, welcome back. I am Jason and today we are discussing water. What are you going to do for your next drink of water if the grid should go down, if the power is out, if the water stops flowing into your home for some reason? What will you do for your next drink of water? So before we get this video started, in the comment section, I'd like to know what your plan is. I want to know, do you even have a plan? If your plan is, I don't know, then we need to start working on one of those plans today, and that's what this video is going to be all about.
Hello, bush kitty.
What I have behind me is a 55-gallon barrel right here, a plastic barrel that I picked up. It had pickles in it, so unfortunately it still smells a bit like pickles. However, in an emergency situation, it would be an excellent container for storing water. I mean, you could store anything and everything in here, whatever you would need a watertight container for. Water is one of the things that we could store in here, 55 gallons at a time. And they don't have to be pickle barrels like this one. They could be whatever, as long as they're a food grade thing that's not toxic and all that kind of good stuff. And they're fairly easy to source online, and I'm sure if you guys do a little bit of research, you can find some. But anyway, I've got a few of these pickle barrels, and I buried one underground. This one, it's got a dirty lid, but as you can see, let's see if I can get that lid off. Got a pretty nasty lid because I haven't covered it yet. I need to work on that. It's on the list of to-dos, is to put some sort of roof over top of these so they can stay nice and clean. But the inside is nice and clean. Look, roly-polies. So if you look down in my barrel, that's been exposed to the elements outside, and it is bone dry, perfectly clean inside there, minus a couple of little leaves that I've dropped in there. But otherwise, good to go. So I could potentially bury several of these, or a larger one of those great big septic tanks, basically. So 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I guess maybe it's been now, I built a small cabin, a tiny cabin, and it is completely running off of rain catchment. So the metal roof, gutters, downspouts all feed a 500-gallon buried tank underneath the ground next to the cabin, and then the water is pumped out through a filter, through a filtration system, and then into the home, and it's for showers and all the stuff. This is a very small scale situation here, and there's no pump and obviously all that kind of stuff there because I don't plan on putting water in this. I'm going to put other things in there. But you get the idea. I could easily take this barrel and put it next to underneath my downspout right here coming off of my roof and catch rainwater. Pretty simple, pretty easy, without much infrastructure involved, without a complex plumbing system going on here. Basically, I could take this downspout. You can see this flexible hose that I've got here. I could easily move that up to this height right here and then use that flexible hose, cut a small hole in here perhaps, and then fill up my barrel. Very easy. Put some screening in there to catch any leaves and stuff like that that might be coming down the downspout to filter out the large particulates that might be getting into my water. And then I would have ready to go access to water close to my home right here, just catching the rainwater. Now, I have an asphalt shingle roof. Definitely less than ideal. I would want to filter that water through a Berkey filter, through a Sawyer filter, through some sort of filter before drinking it. That would be my preference. At a minimum, I'd want to boil it, and we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. But I would have water. I would have access to water where otherwise I wouldn't. If you lived in an urban area, if you lived in a more suburban type area, this might be a really, really good option for you. Catch rainwater off of your roof. If you got a metal roof, that's ideal, but asphalt shingle is a little less than ideal. But if you got to do what you got to do, it's better than dying of dehydration. All right. Now, this is the structure that I use for firewood storage, obviously. But I could easily convert this to a rain catchment type system by placing my barrels right like that. They don't have to be sitting on a platform, obviously. We could just put them on the ground, or we could bury them. And I could rig up a gutter system right here on the edge, the end, the downhill side of my metal roof here, and then pump that stuff or flow it into my barrels. And that would give me a really readily supply of fresh water, assuming I live in a place where it rains, like I do. If you live in a place where it never rains, that's not going to be a really good option for you. So we can talk about some more options in just a second. Fortunately, my house runs on a well. I have a well. It's about 300 and something feet deep. I've had to replace that pump that's way down on the bottom before. That was a good time, let me tell you. That was a real fun time pulling that up by hand. But anyway, my house is on a well, so that gives me a pretty dang reliable source of water, and I'm not reliant upon the city's water system if that should be contaminated for whatever reason. The likelihood of my well water being contaminated in some form or fashion is significantly less than, you know, a municipal water supply of some sort. So I highly suggest, if you have the capability, the means to get a well, very expensive if you don't already have one, but if you're looking for properties, if you're looking to, you know, get off of the grid to some degree, some shape or form, then having a well already there at this property that you're looking for at this new house, then that should be high on your list. Water should be extremely high on the list. But right now, what I'm doing is I am going to be replacing this whole house water filter. It's just a simple, nothing fancy. I think it's a 5 micron filter that filters all the water that goes to my house. This is just part of the system. I'm getting soaked. So I had a hand in laying out all the plumbing in this house, so that makes it organized and, well, somewhat organized, as good as I can make it. And I know how everything works. I know where the water flows, and I can turn things off and on pretty easily. And that may not be the situation. In a lot of homes, a lot of places, a lot of houses that I've worked on specifically, there's one shutoff, you know, and it might be up by the road, and you need to know where that is for emergency situations so you can turn that water off in a hurry. So, where was I before I was making a mess here? So having a reliable source of water is going to be absolutely crucial. Where does your water come from? You know, you need to know that. You need to know where your next drink of water is going to come from. How can you make it safe to drink? Bleach, like if I was going to catch rainwater, store rainwater outside in big barrels or whatever, if I was going to do that, bleach is a good way to do it. Chlorine, 8 drops per gallon, if my math is right, if my numbers are right. You guys can double check that. Let me know in the comment section if that's correct. 8 drops per gallon, something like a tablespoon for 5-gallon bucket of water, somewhere around there. Again, check my math, but something like that. So a gallon of bleach, like what I've got right here, that can go a long ways in disinfecting a lot of water to make it safe from waterborne pathogens. So, you know, microbes that might be living in that water, living in your gutter system or whatever. That'll make it safe to drink. Now, it's not going to get rid of the chemicals and stuff that are in that water, of course. That's where the filtration is going to come in handy. And that's where, you know, like your Berkey filters, your Sawyer filters, your what else? So some whole house filters have really good systems, you know, the charcoal embedded, infused filtration, all that kind of good stuff. That would be fantastic. I've got a whole system here, a water softener, a neutralizer. I've got a UV light, all the things, all the stuff to make my water really good and safe to drink. But, you know, it takes time, it takes money, it takes effort to be able to do it. It's definitely not the simplest way of going about it. It's been a while since I've changed this filter. We'll have to see what it looks like. This comes straight out of the well. Our well water is pretty clean, but it comes straight out of the well. There's no filter before this. This is the initial place that it catches any of the crud. There's my filter. It is not supposed to be that color. It's been, like I said, it's been a long time since I've replaced this filter. It's definitely past due. And my water pressure in the house will actually probably improve significantly now that I am swapping this thing out. But you can see, you know, here's some stuff, a little sandy, you know, residue and stuff like that that's coming out of my well into the house. And without this filter, it would be, you know, we'd be drinking this. You know, we'd be drinking the residue and sediment and stuff like that that's coming into the house. Need that. Don't need that. Now, I realize that a lot of people don't have access to water storage in any great supply. Like, I get that. If you live in an apartment somewhere, water storage is an issue. I mean, you can't just take, you can't store 500 gallons of water in your closet in your in your apartment. That would cause problems. Water is super heavy. One time when we were in North Carolina, we were helping out with the relief efforts for after the Hurricane Helene, and I just happened to hear in the background an emergency going down, and so we all ran, all hands on deck. And basically, what had happened, everybody was storing. The bottles of water were getting dumped into this place by the pallet. Just huge supplies of bottled water for these people that were in need, which is fantastic. But storage was the issue. So what was happening is everybody was stacking these pallets of water, these big cases of water, in this one room in a church, in the building that we were in. Not a church, but it was the community center that we were in. And eventually the floor gave way. It went poof, because of the thousands and thousands, the tons of water that was getting stacked on this floor. The subfloor, the floor joists were not designed to hold that much weight. And it caused a problem and needed to be repaired after the fact. So water storage, what I'm getting at, is an issue because it's bulk and because of its heft. And obviously, if you can put it on the ground level somewhere, you could store a significant amount of water if that's your plan. But having a ready, renewable supply of water is always going to be your best bet. That way you don't have to store it. My water is stored in the well. That's where it's stored. I also have a creek running through the property, but I'm very, very fortunate, and I've been very blessed, and I don't expect everyone to be in that same situation. But I've put myself in this situation on purpose. I have planned accordingly, and this was the plan from the beginning, is to have a really good quality water supply no matter what. So what we've done in the past is we have pulled water from the creek. So, when our power has been out and the well no longer flows because there's no electricity without backup generators and all that kind of stuff, the water does not flow into my house. So what we had done when we first moved into this house is we were pulling 5-gallon buckets of water, 2 at a time from the creek and bringing them up here so we could wash dishes and we could flush the toilets and do all those things and boil it for drinking water and all that good stuff. That's what we were doing, but there's, if you have to, that you have to, but there's ways to go about this stuff if you have the forethought and the time to take care of it, and obviously the funds, because, nothing is free. Things aren't getting any cheaper these days, that's for sure. But it just all depends. It's where your priorities are. Like, what's your priority? We spend money on things every single day. What's your priority? Take care of the priorities first. Water. Take care of water first, and then figure out the rest of the deal. Figure out where you can put the rest of your money. So here's a really nice filter, and I bought a couple of these. This is a little bit nicer than the one that came out of here, and I think this one has some charcoal elements in there. It's a better filter, a little bit more expensive, but it's a better filter. So that's what's going to be going in here. So I'm just going to insert the filter into here. The biggest problem I've had with this filter, I think this one's called like a Big Blue or something like that. Obviously, Big Blue. I don't know. That's what this filter is. Water Group Aquaflow Quality Water Filters. But it takes, you don't have to get this specific water filter that goes inside the replaceable part. You can get various different kinds. But the biggest problem I've had with this one is this O-ring right here. This thing kind of gets out of alignment and falls off when I'm trying to reinstall and causes it to leak, which is less than ideal. Okay. So what I have here, guys, is an Excelsior hand pump. And what I do with this hand pump is I use it to fill up my pressure tank that's sitting here right next to me. And this pressure tank is what fuels the house with the H2O. So if the power should go down, like what we talked about before when we first moved into this house, we were carrying buckets from the creek, and that's lame. So I installed this hand pump here, so even if the power is out, I can come down here and I could pump this thing a few times and fill up my pressure tank here. And that will give me enough water to flush toilets, wash dishes, all the things that you need, you know, water for, still flowing out of the faucets. I can even take a short cold shower essentially without power. And it works pretty good. And I haven't tested it in quite a long time, so I'm going to test it out today and make sure everything's still working properly. But the funny thing is about this is like I said, we were, you know, when we first moved in, we didn't have this option. Power was out for like a week one time, and we were like, this is a drag, you know, trying to wash dishes in cold creek water with sand in it and all that stuff. It's kind of lame. So I installed this thing, and since I've installed this thing, the power has not been out for any significant amount of time. You know, a few hours at a time has been pretty much it, and we haven't really needed this thing. I haven't had to use it. It's nice that it's here, but we haven't had to use it. So it's good to test it out from time to time and just see if everything's flowing good. There's no leaks and all that kind of good stuff. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So we're near 0 PSI right now. I don't know why it's even reading any PSI. I think most of the water's out of the lines, but it's reading about 5 PSI, give or take. So what I'm going to do is attempt to get this thing pressured up. So here's where the water comes into the house. It flows down to here. It goes to the hand pump, down this direction here to another T, and then it flows into my pressure tank right here, and then into the house, hot water heater and all that kind of stuff. So what I need to do is now turn off this one to keep it from going back towards the pump. So now water can flow into my hand pump and then into my pressure tank, which is probably reading pretty much 0 PSI right now. Yep, it is. If your plan is to boil water, you know, oftentimes in more urban areas, they say, you know, there's a boil notice. You know, if something contaminated the water and for whatever reason, you'll need to perhaps boil your water. And if you don't have large containers, you know, large pots like this one right here to boil your water in, it's going to be kind of a pain. If you just got those small little saucepans, it's not going to be a very efficient process. So having just something as simple as that, a large metal pot, you know, 2, 3, 5-gallon pots that you can boil some water in and have a big supply, because it takes time, you know, it takes effort. If the power's out, to even have a way to boil that water, think about that. That should be in your plan as well. We're on propane, so I can boil water off my stovetop as like normal, basically. I just have to ignite it with a lighter instead of using the electronic ignition there. But yeah, we could put a big pot of water on there, we could boil it, and then it's got to take time to cool back down, and that way, you know, you can actually drink it without burning your face off. There we go. Whoops. Making a big mess. There we go. We got it primed now. So now we're pumping water. So now we're pumping water. So that's me filling up the pressure tank. Do you see that? It was on 0 PSI, and we have moved it up to about, looks like 25 PSI. That's filling this up. There's an air bladder inside of that pressure tank, and when the water fills up the tank, it applies pressure to that water bladder, and that water bladder is what pushes the water through my lines in my house. So by me doing this, by me filling up that pressure tank, it will, in turn, once I open up all the valves, it'll push water through all the lines in the house. So that was done with the hand pump, right? Pulling it from my 300-foot deep well. We got a leak. Look, leakage. Shut it down. Plumbing is the worst. Oh man, it's such a pain. Something always leaks. Fittings are never right. It's the wrong threads, wrong size. There's another really cool product out there if you are in a more suburban, urban type area and water storage is an issue, is these water bags that go in your tub. And essentially what happens is if you get word that, you know, or the power's out or whatever, water stops flowing, typically there's still a little bit of residual pressure in those lines, and you can fill up your bathtub. And bathtubs are kind of gross and scuzzy and probably not as clean as we'd like to have them if we were planning on drinking out of them. Bathing in them was one thing, but drinking out of them is another. So you can fill up this bag that lines the tub, and it's perfectly fine because, you know, the subfloor, the foundation, the joists underneath the tub are already designed to support that extra load anyway. So that's a really good solution, and they're really inexpensive. I think they're like $30, and you can have a ready to go storage solution for your water needs. So we still have pressure in our tank, which is good. So we should be able to see if we're leaking by just doing that. So far, so good. We've got, this is our pressure in our line right here in the house. We've got 15 PSI. And as I pump this, we should see that rising. Nice. So pump is working fantastic, even after not being used for, geez, 2-3 years, something like that. It's still working just fine. Good test. We're back in action. Now, another thing to consider is just the quality of your water. If, let's say, you are on a well or city water, a good thing to do is to test the water and see what's actually in the water, because you don't know until you test it. So, like, for example, we took our water to the UGA, University of Georgia Extension office. It costs, I forget what it was. I'm going to call it, say, $20. And you could take a sample of your water, take it there. They could test it for, you know, heavy metals or bacteria or whatever might be in the water that might potentially be harmful. And that's pretty valuable. So you can take it there and you can figure out what it is that's in your water, and you can figure out a solution to that problem, because where you live is where you live, generally speaking, and you're going to have to deal with the water situation. So what we had to do was figure out how to get some bacteria out of our water, and that's why we have the filtration and the UV light. So it gets rid of some of that bacteria that might potentially cause some problems down the road. Now, a lot of people have questions about this hand pump right here, and it is a shallow well pump. It is not designed to pump water really high, you know, beyond, I think it's 12, 15 feet or something like that. And I mentioned my well is 300 feet deep. However, that doesn't mean that the water is 300 feet deep. The water table is really near the surface. So really all this well pump right here, this shallow well pump has to do is pull water horizontally from that direction over there on the hillside. It's got to pull water horizontally. It doesn't have to lift water very far, and that's why it works for me. It may not work in your application. You'll have to do your own research. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate all of your views. If you haven't already hit that thumbs up, please do subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'd be really grateful for that. Leave comments, lots of comments, questions, concerns, add-ons, anything that I missed, little tips and tricks for people that live in more urban type areas that need some sort of water solution. Let me know what your water solution is where you live. Thanks again so much for watching. I have a couple announcements. We are doing Patreon memberships, so if that's something that you might be interested in, getting behind the scenes content, we're going to be doing live Q&A sessions, which I think you guys will find very valuable and very useful. You get more access to me, and who wouldn't want that? So if it's something you're interested in, we're going to have a link in the description, and we'll put it in the comment section as well, pinned at the top. I've got a brand new channel called Fit on 3, where all we do is fitness-based stuff. So 3 times a week, I'll be posting workouts in short form, and then once a week, give or take, I'll be posting a more lengthy video on a fitness-related topic. And if that's something that you might be interested in, fitness for whatever life throws at you, no gym memberships, no spandex, none of that stuff, just real-life fitness to prepare you for whatever life may throw at you. If that's something you might be interested in, consider subscribing to that. That'll be in the description. That'll be in the comment section as well. And until next time, friends, what's the worst that could happen? Let's just go on 3.